Toastmasters International offers a program of communication and leadership projects designed to help people learn the art of speaking, listening, and thinking. Welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm Dorothy Sturlogson. My guests today belong to Toastmasters International, Pete Bruno, Jim Squires, Alan Rubes. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. Pete, let's start with you. What is Toastmasters International?
There's a couple of ways of thinking about Toastmasters, Dorothy. We can think about it as a public speaking club, but we can also realize that it's about leadership equally as well. And so people who join Toastmasters learn good communication skills, but they also learn to lead meetings and other functions. So it does both at the same time. As Vice President of Education, the club likes to refer to me as their scheduler. And so I get to work with people with their work schedule so they have opportunities to learn both leadership and public speaking skills. So we do speeches, we do what the high school calls impromptu and we call table topics to give everyone a chance to have an experience with speaking at each meeting.
How many years have you been involved with Toastmasters?
About 25 years now. I started because I became an expert in something in the 80s and was asked to speak, and the most boring speech I ever heard was one that I gave. And so I immediately came back to Glendive and joined Toastmasters.
On a national or international level, Pete, how long has it been around?
Toastmasters has been around, oh my goodness, since the 70s, and started with a club in the YMCA in California and has gone international now.
So if you've been with Toastmasters for 25 years, do you just not learn? Does it take that long to speak?
Am I a slow learner?
Is this something that's a lifelong commitment?
No, it's not. 6 months, a year, a lot of people get what they want out of it. But I've enjoyed it. It's been kind of something I do for the community. It's kind of like a mini classroom in a way, and I just enjoy it. One time when I was gone for a while, I came back and started giving speeches after a hiatus, and I now hold the club record for the greatest number of awes on record in Glendive. So I like to go and give a speech a month and just keep my hand in. Helps me in the classroom.
Explain the awe thing.
Well, Alan's going to be our WAG today. He's going to give us a word of the day. He's going to count Jim and my ahs and also grammar faux pas. So we'll go ahead and he'll be counting those. So that's what the ah counter does.
Because when most of us speak, there are hesitations, and so we say ah to give us time to think.
And better to pause than ah.
Okay. Jim, you have been with Toastmasters for how long?
In the last 22 years, I've been a member 12 out of those 22 years. At one time, there was a hiatus of an active club in Glendive, and so I was not participating, needed it, and then when it resurfaced in Glendive, I joined that club.
How important has Toastmasters been to what you do?
I would say critically important. It serves both as a language laboratory and skill development, as well as the leadership development that Pete mentioned. I became interested before I knew about Toastmasters. I had been serving as a Peace Corps volunteer in northeastern Brazil, and I witnessed something there that I said, they must do this someplace in the United States, and we've got to do this. They had impromptu speaking events that when I came back here, I discovered Toastmasters much later, and that is exactly what I had envisioned.
When you are at a meeting and you have to give a speech, is there a fear factor?
I hope so. Seriously, I would like to have some level of anxiousness, and to me that's good. Being too casual to me is very dangerous because you will not do your best. So some level of apprehension is good. Something that keeps you from speaking is not. So there's a middle ground there somewhere.
And Alan, your association with Toastmasters, you've been around for how long?
I guess you might say I'm the rookie of the two. I've only been in Toastmasters about 9 years. And it took me probably 5 years to get the courage to attend my first Toastmasters meeting. Originally, our meetings were held in the basement of the coffee den. And to walk down those steps for the first meeting was very nerve-wracking. But I can honestly say that that was probably the toughest part of this whole Toastmasters experience for me, because everybody who's in Toastmasters are there for a reason, and that reason is to become better speakers. So they have an empathy towards new members because they've been there just as the new members are. And so it's a mutually supportive environment where we are encouraged to give evaluations of the speeches, and that's one of the jobs that members have. And it's through these evaluations of what you're doing right and what you need to work on that has helped me become a better speaker.
So when you're evaluating someone else then, Alan, you're kind of sitting in judgment, or do you have a guideline that you follow?
When they're first starting out, the Competent Communicator Manual, there's 10 speeches that build on each other, and that manual for each speech has a section for the evaluator to be, things that the evaluator needs to be looking for or listening for in that person's speech. And there's spaces where you can write down the good points and some of the things that need to be worked on. And after you get through the Competent Communicator Manual, then there's other manuals at the advanced level with the same sort of format. So.
And Pete said that you're doing what today? Now you're counting our ahs?
Counting our ahs, yes. As I think Jim may have mentioned, it's very easy to fall into the trap of when you can't think of something to say to fill it with words. And that's one of the issues that I've been working on, and I continue to work on. It's not necessarily bad to have a pause to think of where you're going with your speech. In fact, you can use that pause to add a vocal variety to your speech while you're able to collect your thoughts and get on with the next part of your speech. So the ahs are something that I think all of us strive to work on, me especially.
So Jim, when you're preparing a speech, how important is how you appear to the group compared with what you have to say?
Obviously, I want to come across as someone who has credibility, and that, choice of words, succinctness. Pete Bruno here taught me something years ago. He gave me a formula that since that time I have shared with literally hundreds of others. There is a technique called hook, book, look, and took. Rhyming words. A hook is how you capture someone's attention. A book is how it's organized. The points, for example, a book has a preface and then it goes into various chapters and comes to some kind of a conclusion or summary. Hook, book, look. What does it look like? Eye contact, vocal variety, as Alan mentioned. Pauses. Pauses are so critical in allowing the audience or the hearer time to process what you're doing. Humor doesn't work without pauses, period. I don't know if I've answered your question. Oh, then the last is took. What is the takeaway message? Hook, book, look, and took. Pete taught me this, and I find that this is something that is used in curriculum development, it's used in journalism, it's used particularly in Sunday school classes, that type of thing where you're teaching something, teaching stories. So you use this process. In all of my writing, submit articles to the Ranger Review or to whatever, and those will always follow that same format. And that is what I use in speech preparation. And the speech that I'll have here shortly, it follows that exact format.
So Pete, Alan's writing that down. A typical meeting, you meet how often?
We meet twice a month at the Kearney Center and really enjoy that facility. And we meet over the noon hour, and they're open meetings, so someone who's just curious is welcome to slip in or come with another member. Any of the three of us will do in a pinch, and just observe a meeting.
Typically, how many people come?
We have anywhere in the summer, we're maybe just enough to get the meeting done, up to about 15.
Does everybody participate in every meeting?
Everyone has a chance to speak in every meeting.
Take us through how a meeting progresses.
Okay, well, today for our little demonstration, I'm going to be Toastmaster and introduce Jim. So our president opens the meeting, and we do a little bit of business, perhaps, if there's business to be done. And then we go ahead and get into the meeting itself, where the Toastmaster may say a few things about the agenda, invite people like Alan to go ahead and tell new people in the meeting what his job is, as he will do for us today. And then we go ahead and introduce the speakers, and we have anywhere from 2 to 4 speeches, and then we do those impromptu table topics, and then we do evaluations and end up the meeting. Even the Toastmaster in the meeting gets evaluated by someone.
Okay, so show us how that would work then.
Okay, so let's go ahead then, fellow Toastmasters, and start our meeting. And let's start with our WAG, Alan, today with the word of the day.
The WAG is an acronym for Word of the Day, Awe Counter, and Grammarian. Today's word of the day is salubrious. And salubrious is making good health possible or likely. And we could use it in a sentence. Fresh air and exercise are always salubrious. That's a word that we don't always use, and that's why we have the word of the day to broaden a person's vocabulary. So, and I will be counting the how many times our speakers use the word salubrious. Thank you.
And so then we applaud, as I did, and we go on to the next person. And so then we begin our speeches, and Jim's going to give about a 3-minute speech on humor today. So I would introduce a little bit about Jim's background and a little bit about his speech. And his evaluator would have a manual and would be taking notes, looking for things that he's doing well primarily, but also at least one suggestion to help him improve the next time. So Jim and humor.
We connect to people emotionally. We tell stories, we use humor, and it really strengthens our communication. Several years ago, when my neighbor, Jim Carter, passed away, the family had a gathering over at Silvanale Sila Funeral Home, and they invited friends and neighbors to come and speak that evening, and I was one of those. So I spoke to this group of family and friends, and basically I answered the question, what was it like living across the street from Jim and Jan Carter? Well, I broke this down into 3 stories. The first story is about a manure pile. Jim had ordered in 2 truckloads of well-rotted horse manure. Laverne Peterson delivered those, dropped them off, and he left 2 piles that were about 35 feet long, 3 feet deep, and 8 feet wide on the neighbor property. Well, there's only one word that you could describe this this particular pile of manure, and that was noticeable. My wife asked him if she could use some of it, and he readily agreed to that. And he said, take as much as you needed. Well, in the course of the entire summer, she used about 20 tons of that manure that was there. That's why we have the flowers we do in our yard. The second story is this. During high school, JR, Jim and Jan's son, got involved in automobile racing. And in the process of this involvement, he was pretty good. And he did a lot of winning or placing well in the competition he was involved in. But as a result of the hard use of that, there was an awful lot of repair that had to go on to those race cars. So he and his pit crew would work on these things in the evenings. Oftentimes they would have to replace an engine. That would generally finish up somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, before they connected the exhaust manifolds and the rest of the exhaust system, they would always fire it up. Now, you can imagine this. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. The windows on our house, which is maybe 150 feet away from where they're working on this car, are open. And they fire it up and they run it up to redline a couple times just to make sure that the engine is operating properly. My comment on that was that it sounded like a father who was letting his son build some real useful skills. The third story is that of the banker. When I was involved in agriculture, I had to borrow a lot of money. So every year I would go to the Community First Bank with my pro forma cash flow statements and all of this, and the loan officer assigned to me was Jim Carter. So here I have my nearest neighbor, who is also my banker. Now that can be kind of an interesting scenario. Now, I was relating this story once to a fellow member on the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee that I'd served on at that time. And I told him that the first person that I ran into every morning when I first left the house was my banker. Larry Barber said to me, looking me straight in the eye, he said, "Jim, move." Humor adds a lot to a story. About 10 days ago, I was at a spring convention for Toastmasters in Deadwood, South Dakota. We had an Irishman by the name of Conan Caneen who spoke to us. Conan told me this: "That is such a good story. Why spoil it with the truth?" Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jim. So if I was Jim's evaluator and it was later in the meeting, I would comment positively about his appearance, about his vocal variety, his delivery, and then I might make a suggestion that he rely a little less on his notes as he did for me to be able to comment on it now. So now the speeches are done and we come to the table topics portion of the meeting. And I believe Alan has got 2 stumpers for Jim and myself. And since Jim just spoke, I will go ahead and reply for about a minute, maybe to a minute and a half, and try to be salubrious to Alan's topic.
All right, Pete. You're the mayor of Glendive. An atomic bomb was detonated and has destroyed the town. There are only a handful of survivors left. Give a speech to them telling why this disaster is a good event.
Fortunately, the clock doesn't begin until my first word or gesture, so normally I would take pause. for a moment with a topic like that. You know, Jerry does a wonderful job, and then maybe I can imitate him and save myself in this situation. Fellow Toastmasters, Alan, thank you for a challenging topic. It's a big topic. It is such a big topic, I've got to go back to the oil spill and even begin to think about how we would deal with this and have so few resources, just a few people left alive. As Jim often says, oh my, man, my mind is going, oh my, oh my, oh my, with this. How to encourage people as we think about the recent tornadoes just this month, 160 of them in 11 states. Wow. How do you encourage people who have lost everything? My response is somewhat like Jerry Jimison, and that's to focus on what we can do. When I, as an individual, have a plan, then I've got a way of surviving. I've got a way of coping. But we know from psychology that in that circumstance, people would be in shock and almost psychologically, mentally denying that this has happened. And then comes anger. Generally in this situation, anger at the enemy or the idiot who allowed this to happen. And then sadness before we recover. And so my goal as mayor would be to go ahead and put out a plan, put out a sense of this is what we're going to do and we will get through this together. Mr. Table Topic Master.
Very good. Jim, your topic, you just put your car through the garage door. Tell your wife, Correoza, why this is good news.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters and guest, Dorothy. I just ordered a new garage door. Taking it down will be a lot easier now. Yesterday, I just repaired the hanging thing that broke last week. This is a great opportunity for a new beginning. Unlike the mayor who has just spoken, I don't have to reestablish communication. The communication has already taken place. Now, my wife was the last one to take out a garage door at our house. It's been about 40 years ago now, and those things have been forgotten, and I risk even mentioning these things. Sometimes some of those sleeping dogs are just best left sleeping. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a good response. And plus, if you decide to put up a new garage door, you can be salubrious and in the fresh air and exercise it'll take to get this accomplished. So good for you. The second round of table topics I have 8 words, and I want each of you to pick 4 of these words and give a 1 to 2 minute talk about using these words, and also try to use the word of the day, salubrious. Jim, I will give you the first opportunity with these 4 words. Got 2. Should be 4.
For time's sake, maybe we should just do 1 word each. Will that work?
That works.
Do you want me to incorporate these or just choose?
I think with time limits, it's just use one of them.
Hypodermic needle. To be avoided, but necessary. As a parent, I remember my children receiving their shots. I think I felt like I was being a mean parent, but I actually am one of those people that do support vaccinations. I've lived elsewhere in the world, and believe me, there are times that having the protection of the general masses and with vaccination has turned out to be an absolutely desirable thing. Although I don't like them, they're a necessary part of our culture and part of the disease prevention in this country. So, hate them, but accept the good they do.
Thank you. Thank you. Pete, I'll just have you pick one.
I'll just take all four
Okay.
and do as Jim did.
All right.
So this would be in another meeting. We just each get to do a table topic per meeting, but this is another example of what we could do. So I will pick, without trying to put all four of these together, fellow Toastmasters, flying saucer. Flying saucer, fellow Toastmasters. UFOs. You know, here in the West, particularly in Arizona where I grew up, people can get a little bit overly enthusiastic, way beyond salubrious, in regard to flying saucers and UFOs. If we think back to the Jetsons and the wonders of animated flying saucers, that may give us a warm, friendly feeling. But if we think down to Arizona and Roswell, or whatever this is, New Mexico and such, and all of the speculation that has gone on about there being aliens deep in the ground in captivity there, we might even clinically be approaching paranoia of some type. So let me go ahead and say flying saucers are great if you're a kid and watching cartoons, but don't go too far. Fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's a usual part of our meeting is the table topics, and it helps us to think on our feet and not be too overly concerned about not being able to think of what to say immediately. It's a thought process, and it's been a wonderful part of the Toastmasters meeting that I've come to enjoy. Thank you.
Do you know when you come to a meeting what you're going to be doing aside from having a prepared speech? Do you know that you'll be part of the tabletop?
Each about a month or two in advance, after people have told me their preferences, they know when they're scheduled to speak, and also know that if they don't have a speech ready at the last minute, they will by default be a speech evaluator. And they also know at least a month in advance whether their job is to be Toastmaster, to run the lights, the timer job, to track whether people are keeping the time limits that they've been set. We have the general evaluator who evaluates the whole meeting and calls on the individual evaluators to give speech evaluations. We actually vote on best speech and best table topics and have ribbons and a little ceremony at the end of the meeting to continue to encourage people to improve through the awards.
So the object is to keep people coming back to learn more each time they come?
Absolutely, and as Alan mentioned, it is designed, we pay $40 every 6 months to Toastmasters because they keep improving the curriculum, which is very important in today's growing world. So now they have things to help people in terms of speaking here, like being or involvement with media. So there are lots and lots of specialization areas after you get those first 10 steps, those building blocks, if you would, in terms of developing your public speaking ability.
Does Toastmasters offer a speakers bureau?
Toastmasters does. It's on Facebook, and some of us who are welcoming opportunities to speak in the community or in the area are listed there under Toastmasters Speaking Bureau or Glendive Speaking Bureau, and yes, we do that.
Let's talk real briefly in closing about Kristen Marble. She was part of your group before she left.
Yes, yeah, a very welcome and enthusiastic part.
And is now published in the Toastmasters International magazine.
She's been published in several magazines since she's been a part of Toastmasters. She does very well.
Do you attribute part of that maybe to her success as being a Toastmasters?
I think she does, and we certainly have enjoyed both her publications and her speeches.
Alan, how did we do all-wise? I
counted 4 ahs by Jim, and Pete, I commend you. You only had 2 ahs and 1 so that's good. The word of the day was used by Pete, I believe, 2 times, and I believe I was able to sneak that word in 1 time as well. So then that's basically, and the grammar that's been used during the meeting, I feel was appropriate for whatever the occasion was, and so worth, the word of the day, counter and grammarian. I think that we've had a successful meeting, and turn it back over to our Toastmaster, Pete.
Thank you, Alan.
And in closing, Pete, anything you'd like to say?
Thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure to be a part of this media, to be a part of KXGN and the things that you all do.
And Jim, in closing, something you'd like to say?
There are a lot of shortcuts that you learn during the course of Toastmasters, and some of those have been alluded to or addressed here. The hook, book, look, and took. There are things that tie the beginning of a speech to the end so we can remember what was said. There are ways, themes, for example, follows an acronym called FLOW. When we do table topics, one of the things we can use is an Oreo cookie. Something good on the outside, something better in the middle, and something good on the bottom side. We have a lot of acronyms we use. OREO stands for opinion, research, experience, and a summary or a closing opinion. That's a way to structure an impromptu speech.
Thank you, gentlemen. Alan Rubes, Jim Squires, Pete Bruno. I hope you all have a salubrious week.
You as well.
And for Let's Talk About It, I'm Dorothy Sterlogson. Thank you for joining us.